Hey everybody, welcome back to my layout. Today, I felt like, let's get plastered. No, I'm not talking about getting drunk, but I'm talking about putting some plaster on this scene here to give it more definition and shape. Now, basically what you can see is we've got the aluminum screen pretty much everywhere. Of course, you can see some areas, or you might not be able to see some areas, but some areas it's got newspaper under it that kind of gives it a little more of a rounded edge with the aluminum screen. And today, putting the plaster in is just going to be that finishing touch before we get ready to paint and flock. Okay, so the first thing we need, I have a big tub here full of Plaster of Paris with a ice cream scoop. Now, I put it in a tub because a tub's much more easier to handle, especially when you go from, your plastering time to the next time you plaster. It's just much easier dealing with the tub than it is dealing with the actual bag. Alright. The next thing you're going to want is a bowl. Not just any kind of bowl, but you want a bowl that can easily flex. The reason is once your plaster dries in the bowl, you're going to want to break that apart, and you'll end up with some plaster shavings just like so. This you can go back, hammer down, or hammer them into small particles by putting them in a bag first, and this will actually give you some good texture for some of the pours that we will do, but I won't do any of those type of pours today. And then of course you need water, and this is not drinking water. This is actually a bottle that I drank out of earlier that I refilled with tap water. So, but I always like to reuse water bottles because it's much easier just to put a little bit of water in as you need it. Last but not least, a spoon. You can use a metal spoon, plastic spoon. If you got a metal spoon, you might want to have something hard to beat the plaster off of when it dries to it. Plastic spoon, you can easily mold it, but you might want to have a few of those because over time they will break. Now the reason why I use a spoon is I can easily take my plaster, get a scoop, pour, and slop it on there. If it's a wet pour, I can use it to mold the way that I want my plaster molded. And then if I want cracks and crevices in my landscape, I can use this back point here and use the point to do that. Alright, so I'm going to dump these shavings out. I keep them in a bag because that's what I do. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get 2 good scoops of this Plaster of Paris in here with the ice cream scoop. So scoop 1 and scoop 2. So you can see we got our plaster in here, and then I'm just going to take a little bit of water and pour along the top of it. And once I get the water in, I got to go ahead and start mixing. I got to get that, because if you don't start mixing it right away, it'll be clumpy and then you get dry stuff everywhere. So make sure it's mixed really good with your spoon. Try to get all the air out of it that you can. Now if you happen to have like a wet pour and it's too wet, you can always come back and add more plaster to it. However, if it's too dry, it's a little harder adding more water to it. But this gives you a pretty decent consistency for a wet pour, but that's just a little too wet than what I want. So I'm going to go back with at least, say, half a scoop. And see if I can't use that to thicken it up a little bit more. Just try to get all that air out. Okay. So now you can see it's got a thicker consistency, and that is a consistency that I like. Okay, so before we do anything, these 3 cars in that house has got to get out of the way, because I do not want to get plaster all over them. Alright, so I'm going to take the plaster, and I'm just going to kind of dump it on there, like so. And I'm just going to use the back end of my spoon to spread it out. Let's see if we can't, and try to push it into the aluminum screen, because your screen is going to act like your rebar. And eventually you might have a few metal pieces that stick up. Once your screen dries, you can always go back with some electrical scissors and cut that out. Alright. Hope y'all can see exactly what I got going on here. Just basically going back over the areas that are already starting to dry. And it's not as humid today, which means this is going to set a little faster. But before I apply paint to it, I definitely want to let it cure for at least 24 hours. Alright, we can go ahead and get another mixture going. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. But you just want to keep mixing it till you get all that dry stuff off the sides. Quite a bit of dry stuff on my spoon. Okay. Try to knock off that hardened stuff. It's already starting to harden on the inside of my spoon. Now I gotta be real careful with this culvert that I put in. You know, one thing is, or what Bob Ross says, there's no such thing as a mistake. Happy little accidents. So, yeah, this stuff here is starting to thicken up, and it's doing it fairly quick. So sometimes when you get real thick, what you can do is drag your spoon upwards, like on something steeper. And it will actually take hold a little better. And then you can always come back. It's much easier going up with it than it is going down. I think some of this is just going to be, it's already starting to dry up too hard that it's not going to want to mold very well. And sometimes that happens. And if you're not too careful, sometimes you can damage the screen. So I think right there, I think we're good for right now. I'll have to see if I can't stick out my culvert a little more, because I definitely don't want that covered. There we go. Alright, well, I'm going to pause this video so that way the stuff inside my bowl can harden up, and then we will come back here in just a few minutes and slap some more on. Okay? So I'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. So I went ahead and got off my spoon, the plaster, and you can see that I went ahead and knocked a few pieces off, but I still need to try to get more off of the bowl. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of work it around and scrape all the thick stuff. And sometimes you can work it back and forth too. Because we want to make it to where it's easier to mix our mixture. Alright, so now I'm going to dump that in my bag. And I'm going to work the stuff on the bottom. Alright, so you can see how much better that looks. Okay. So let's get some more plaster. 1 scoop. 2 scoops. Loosen her out. Get some water. Pour on the top of it. And start mixing. This one's going to be a pretty good wet pour. And sometimes a good wet pour is good for like a flat area. So what I'm going to do here is just try to work it in up on this flat ridge. Let's see if we can't work it back towards that culvert. I don't want to go under it, or I don't want to cover it. So I'm going to try to spoon most of it away from it. But I do want to go over it. I'm just basically using the spoon just to kind of spread it out. Trying to get the edge of the driveway there. And it's okay if I cover that board, because this is going to be a gravel driveway anyways. So the road needs to be a little rough. Just get out as much of this as I can. And just kind of smooth it out. Because you don't want it to be able to, you know, tell the difference between your the end of the aluminum screen and where it's stapled onto that hardboard. I want to kind of have that kind of spread it out like thick butter. Okay. Just got a little bit there in that spoon. See if I can use that point to get it out. There we go. Let's see if I can shove that in. Alright, let me go ahead and get another mixture going. 1 scoop. 2 scoops. Get a little bit of water in there. And just start stirring again. Just try to get all these bubbles out. I might have poured in just a little too much water. And that's one thing you definitely don't want to do, is slop it like that. Because if it ever gets on your track, man, that is a fun mess to try to clean up. Okay, I'm going to add just a little bit more, because that is just too runny. It's almost like the consistency of a puree. I need something just a tad bit thicker. Alright. So now I'm just going to kind of, and here I'm wanting to butt that up to the house. Ooh, I got a chunk. So, and with the house sitting on the hill, just kind of splatter it on there. And the thing about this scenery is, don't try to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection in nature. Or at least I've never heard of nature being perfect. I mean, where do you see a tree that has a perfect limb on all sides with the perfect number of leaves, or like a mountain that's perfect all the way around? I hate to tell you, there's no such thing. I'm just finding spots just to kind of smooth it on. Oh yeah, that hardened up quick. I might not be able to use that. I'm just going to move that out of the side. Same with that piece. And then as it starts to dry, you can go back with your spoon and just kind of rub right over it, and it will give it kind of a rough texture, which is what you really want. You don't want anything smooth. You want rough. I mean, you do want some smooth elements, but not everything you want smooth. Alright, well, I'm going to have to pause again, let my bowl and my spoon dry. But I hope you can see, what we're trying to accomplish here. It looks kind of like a scene, where a blizzard is taking place. And that's kind of what you want at first. And then just come in and kind of rough your edges. Here, that's a little too smooth. You can even use your fingers to try to rough it out as well. But sometimes you just got to be careful with the little wires, because sometimes that don't feel good. So basically all I'm doing is just kind of going over it, making sure I don't have any rough edges, but to make sure that I still have some type of texture on it. Okay, well, I will return again. Okay, now we're back again. So I went ahead and cleaned my bowl and my spoon. So I'm going to go ahead and get 2 more scoops. And get some more water. And start mixing. See if I can't get some of these bubbles to stop forming. Now, one of the things I noticed when I got eye level is the back end of the pond is built up higher than the front end. So I'm probably going to have to add layers of plaster on this front end, so that way the water is to be redirected around the back and the so that, in other words, so it doesn't wash out the train tracks. Okay, that's just a little too thin. I'm just going to put in about one more scoop, or almost a scoop. See if I can't get just a little thicker consistency. There we go. Okay. Okay, that's a little better. Alright. Now I'm coming up to another culvert down here on the bottom, so I'm going to have to be very careful with how much I put on it, because I don't want to cover it fully. I want to make it look like, you know, the water is to run under the road. I mean, you know, this just takes time and practice. I suggest before you try to do this on your layout at home, get you a scrap piece of wood and make like a mountain and try it that way. Practice on something that's not your layout first. Alright, I think I might have made this one here just a little too thick for a smooth pour, but that's okay, we will manage. Now theoretically, I would put my backdrops in after I do this step here, but because of the way this part of the layout is designed, I can't really go that direction. So I'm literally butting this up to the backdrop, and anything extra that I don't want, I can always come back and use a wet towel, a wet washcloth to get it off. Okay, so I'm going to continue working this over here because my stuff's already thickening up and that's not what I wanted. So, like Bob Ross says, happy little accidents. If you do not know who Bob Ross is, very famous painter, used to be, I think, in the Special Forces when he was in the military. And by the way he talks on his painting show, The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross, you would not think he was military, especially Special Forces. Okay. I think I'm about ready to call it quits for the night. I was just kind of wanting to do this as a demonstration, just to kind of show you how I do things. And I hope this is something that you could easily learn. And you know, if you've got other suggestions, feel free to share in the comment section, as I think others would enjoy listening. And, you know, make sure you hit subscribe, hit the bell, so you can get future notifications. And I think that's going to be a wrap for this evening. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. And I will go ahead and run a train right by this and get the camera eye level, so that way you can see the difference of the plaster versus the screen. So, alright, well, here comes your train in just a few minutes.